Good morning, Year 6. Today is Wednesday, the 20th of January, and your LC is, can I find evidence to support a character's opinion? So evidence is our proof. Think of it like a detective. And when we're working with novels and texts, the evidence will be the writing that is actually in the novel and in the text. That's your proof. That's your evidence. The parts that you need to read today are, starting with part 2, Via, A Tour of the Galaxy, Before August, Seeing August, and August Through the Peephole. I'm going to start us off with A Tour of the Galaxy and Before August, and you can read the rest. August is the sun. Me and Mom and Dad are planets orbiting the sun. The rest of our family and friends are asteroids and comets floating around the planets orbiting the sun. The only celestial body that doesn't orbit August, the sun, is Daisy the dog. And that's only because, to her little doggy eyes, August's face doesn't look like very different from any other human's face. To Daisy, all our faces look alike, as flat and pale as the moon. I'm used to the way this universe works. I've never minded it because it's all I've ever known. I've always understood that August is special and has special needs. If I was playing too loudly and he was trying to take a nap, I knew I would have to play something else because he needed this rest after some procedure or other had left him weak and in pain. If I wanted Mom and Dad to watch me play soccer, I knew that 9 times out of 10, they'd miss it because they were busy shuttling August to speech therapy or physical therapy or a new specialist or a surgery. Mom and Dad would always say I was the most understanding little girl in the world. I don't know about that, just that I understood there was no point in complaining. I've seen August after his surgeries, his little face bandaged up and swollen, his tiny body full of IVs and tubes to keep him alive. After you've seen someone else going through that, it feels kind of crazy to complain over not getting the toy you'd asked for, or your mom missing a school play. I knew this even when I was 6 years old. No one ever told it to me. I just knew it. So I've gotten used to not complaining, and I've gotten used to not bothering Mom and Dad with little stuff. I've gotten used to figuring things out on my own, how to put toys together, how to organise my life so I don't miss friends' birthday parties, how to stay on top of my schoolwork so I never fall behind in class. I've never asked for help with homework, never needed reminding to finish a project or study for a test. If I was having trouble with a subject in school, I'd go home and study it until I figured it out on my own. I taught myself how to convert fractions into decimal points by going online. I've done every school project pretty much by myself. And when Mum or Dad ask me how things are going in school, I've always said, good, even when it hasn't always been so good. My worst day, worst fall, worst headache, worst bruise, worst cramp, worst mean thing anyone did say has always been nothing compared to what August has gone through. And this isn't me being noble, by the way. It's just the way I know it is. And this is the way it's always been for me, for the little universe of us. This year, there seems to be a shift in the cosmos. The galaxy is changing. Planets are falling out of alignment. Before August. I honestly don't remember my life before August came into it. I look at pictures of me as a baby and I see Mom and Dad smiling so happily holding me. I can't believe how much younger they looked back then. Dad was this hipster dude, and Mom was this cute Brazilian fashionista. There's one shot of me at my 3rd birthday. Dad's right behind me, while Mom's holding the cake with 3 lit candles. And in the back of us are Tata and Papa, Grans, Uncle Ben, Aunt Kate, and Uncle Poe. Everyone's looking at me, and I'm looking at the cake. You can see in that picture how I really was the first child, the first grandchild, the first niece. I don't remember what it felt like, of course, but I can see it plain as can be in the pictures. I don't remember the day they brought August home from the hospital. I don't remember what I said or did or felt when I saw him for the first time, though everyone has a story about it. Apparently, I just looked at him for a long time without saying anything at all. And then finally I said, it doesn't look like Lily. And that was the name of a doll Grans had given me when Mom was pregnant so I could practice being a big sister. It was one of those dolls that are incredibly lifelike, and I had carried it everywhere for months, changing its diaper, feeding it. I'm told I even made a baby sling for it. The story goes that after my initial reaction to August, it only took a few minutes, according to Grans, or a few days, according to Mom. Before I was all over him, kissing him, cuddling him, baby talking to him. After that, I never so much as touched or mentioned Lily ever again. Now I will leave the remaining parts for you to read. So what's happened now in the story? There's been a change, hasn't there? There's been a shift in the narrative and perspective. We're no longer hearing this story from Oggie's point of view. We're actually hearing it from his sister, Via's point of view. And I wonder, how will this change things? Okay, just stepping back ever so slightly to something we read it last week. On page 30, Jack says, Julian's a jerk. So we could find some evidence in the text between those pages that prove Jack's point. Just a note on finding pages. If you've got an actual physical copy of the book, these pages will apply. If you're reading the online version, it's slightly different pages, but you can find that part, the performance space, very easily. We've done it before. So for each piece of evidence, we need to explain why it illustrates that Julian's a jerk. So when I go back to the performance space, I read sentences like where Julian asks, what's the deal with your face? I mean, were you in a fire or something? Now that's incredibly rude, isn't it? Firstly. We've also got evidence there of where Julian steps in the way. And I'll find the evidence for that because that's what we're going to do today. So, for example, yeah, let's just go, agreed Charlotte, following Jack down the stairs to the next floor. I started to follow her, but Julian cut right in front of me, which actually made me stumble backward. Oops, sorry about that, said Julian, but I could tell from the way he looked at me that he wasn't really sorry at all. So there's our evidence there of Julian behaving in this way. And that explains that he's behaving in this manner because he's clearly doing it on purpose. So we find the evidence in the text that proves our point, and then we explain why. On page, insert the page, Julian steps in the way of August. We take the quote from the text, and then we explain why. He did it on purpose, which shows that he might be wanting to pick on August, for example. Okay, now we move forward to some of the reading from today. Levere says, August is the sun. Find at least 3 pieces of evidence in that part of the novel called Tour of the Galaxy that tells us why she thinks this. And for each piece of evidence, explain why it illustrates, shows her feelings. So August is the sun. Think about that. It's figurative language, isn't it? Was-a, is-a. It's an example of a metaphor. Now, August is a boy. He's not the sun. But this figurative language tells us something. And if we think about our own sun, a star in our solar system, all of the planets orbit around the sun. So what does that tell us? And the evidence is in the text, of course, about how people see August. It's almost like he is the center of attention and everything else revolves around him. So our evidence is in what Bea is saying when she says that August the sun. And of course, our evidence is then further in how other family members behave and react to August. Bea says that me and Mom and Dad are planets orbiting the sun. But we know that planets go around the sun. They orbit around the sun. The rest of our family and friends are asteroids and comets floating around the planets orbiting the sun. So her feelings are clear, aren't they? These pieces of evidence show us her feelings about August and how people treat him. And of course, the only individual or living thing that doesn't orbit around August is Daisy the dog. Leah says, I never used to see August the way other people saw him. Find at least 4 pieces of evidence in seeing August that tell us how we know this. It's your task. So your first task is to use Tour of the Galaxy to find at least 3 pieces of evidence that tell us why she thinks that August is the sun. And for each piece of evidence, explain why it shows or illustrates her feelings. Perhaps you could fit in some IE or EI words in here. Via believes, via perceives. And finally, Via says, I never used to see August the way other people saw him. Now find at least 4 pieces of evidence in seeing August that tell us how we know this. All of your evidence will be available in the text. It's your job to go and find it. I'm here for you for any support if you need it, so please ask. Thank you. Goodbye.